The role that meat plays in contemporary American society goes beyond its functional purpose and nutritional contributions. Instead, meat has more to do with culture than it does with proposed dietary benefits. In addition, the decisions we make in regard to consumption of meat are not always rational. An example of the irrationality of consumption patterns can be found when looking at food taboos that focus on meat and other animal products. Food taboos exist within every culture, but those centered on meat consumption represent the most common of food taboos. This chart demonstrates the proportion of meat taboos versus taboos against other kinds of food across a variety of places. There are a number of possible theoretical explanations for the prominence of meat prescriptions in food taboos. The first is the functional perspective, which argues that prescriptions are explicable in terms of their utility. For example, animal husbandry of an ecologically destructive species may prove to be an inefficient use of local resources, and thus their production and consumption become irrelevant to that culture. Another example of the functional perspective stresses the health-promoting aspects of meat taboos. The symbolic perspective, on the other hand, attempts to explain food taboos in terms of the meaning that the targets hold for their actors. The actors being the consumers, and the targets being the object, or in this case, meat. These perspectives are helpful in explaining some food taboos as well as avoidance practices, but what they fail to explain are why some meat products are taboo and others are not. Though animal product taboos are found consistently across cultures, the kinds of animals against which prescriptions exist vary greatly. A commonly used example by academics to demonstrate differences in meat taboo is the consumption of dogs, or in our case, non-consumption. Reasons as to why our society does not practice consumption of dogs is often questioned by academics as an example of the irrationality of some of our dietary habits. A quote by author Jonathan Safran Foer highlights the differences in taboos and consumption norms across different cultures. The French, who love their dogs, sometimes eat their horses. The Spanish, who love their horses, sometimes eat their cows. And the Indians, who love their cows, sometimes eat their dogs. This quote further demonstrates the need for another explanation that goes beyond the functional and the symbolic perspectives. While dogs aren't frequently held at a totemic level, it is still very much frowned upon to consume dogs in contemporary American society. Consumption of dogs, though, would in fact satisfy the functionalist perspective. They are raised sustainably and healthily, and for the most part humanely, or it is in no way less humane than traditional factory farming methods. They're perfectly safe to eat when cooked properly, and millions are euthanized each year anyways. The issue here, then, resides in the symbolic perspective. While each of us may know that it is not okay to eat dogs in our society, not everybody will be able to verbalize exactly why. These are called unconscious taboos. A possible explanation for this is that dogs live in closer proximity to humans as pets than do other animals. It is their close association to humans that makes eating that animal unacceptable. So maybe we can conclude then that the closer the species lives in association with humans, the more taboos against eating that species exist. Looking at plant species, though, that logic does not uphold. Nobody would think twice about using herbs grown in a pot on a windowsill, but eating an animal that lives in your household is wrong. Just like other elements that make up a respective culture, their food taboos are shared, transmitted, and commonly understood throughout. These elements are arbitrary and are not always easily explained or understood by outsiders. Perhaps, then, a psychologically based perspective is needed to provide more insight into the existence of certain meat taboos. In conclusion, food is not rational. Dietary choices go beyond their functional purposes and instead are linked with aspects of individual and cultural identity.